Welcome to Palcast, your Create International podcast. God Network News, where we give you a new perspective
on events happening in our world today.
This is GNN.
This is God Network News, episode 172. Welcome, GNN fans, to another episode of God Network News, the podcast that tells you what God's doing around the world. Not what CNN tells you, but what GNN tells you is going on in the world. If you're tired of listening to all of that crisis network news and you want to hear what God's doing, well, give us a listen. Greetings to our faithful God Network News listeners. We are excited to bring you more great stories of movements that are happening amongst unreached people groups. This particular group of stories is coming from our brother John, who works in a very unreached area of Africa, and he is working in an island off the coast, and it is very, very unreached. In fact, he mentions in one of these stories that electricity has just recently come to his island, and that God is actually using it to bring people to his house, and then he shares the gospel message. Get ready for some fantastic stories of God's faithfulness, of God working even in this difficult time of COVID. So
Yeah.
did he, but he's working on the island, right? The island that you're on.
Yes, he is working on the island, but he faced a lot of difficulties, persecution. His dad is actually a Muslim,
Okay.
and he was facing a lot of persecution, rejection in his family, and but he was coming to us like, what do I do? So you know what, we are your family, they are threatening me that they will not feed me, and if I continue to walk, but you know what, God did something really powerful. He was able to testify, to give testimonies, testify his faith, his family, and the family began to see change in his life, something that they had never seen before. How he radically gave up all of his past and the things that he was doing before, and he was full of love towards his own people. And then one day we went to this soccer field, and the people, that's one of the places where many people get together on the island when there is soccer. The whole community come to the soccer field because that's the only entertainment that they have.
Yeah.
And so there was his father. And then his father comes to me and he says, you know what? I see since my son started hanging out with you, something has changed in him. We have done so many evil things, so many bad things to him, but he never fought back, and he still loves us. And I am so amazed by, his heart. And that's not the son I raised. And I've seen how different he is. And what is this thing that you gave him, and that has made him that way. And then, I started sharing, about the gospel of the kingdom. To that day, I just felt God, pouring out, his love to him in that day. And he said, I really want to experience that, because I have never seen any radical change, something that happens so quick like that in my son's life. I have seen it, and how quickly he changed, and from who he was to what he is today. I'm just amazed. I want to come and join you guys, and just be a part of your family.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
then few weeks later, his son came to me and said, my dad asked for prayer today. He wants to follow the Lord.
Wow,
And
that's
then today, the dad is in the church, is in one of the groups, and
wow.
he is also testifying to many other people. And it's just beautiful to see that how God could use such a young man and change that young man, and through him, the people around him being influenced by that and also wanting to change and follow the ways, of the Lord. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
wonderful.
beautiful,
That is
amazing to
exciting
me.
because I'm sure his father is an influential person as well. And so,
Exactly.
yeah, he
Mm-hmm.
model that he is setting, other
Mm-hmm.
people look at that and,
Exactly.
wow,
Mm-hmm.
if he's become a follower of Jesus, maybe I can too,
Mm-hmm.
Often
Yeah.
that way. I
Mm-hmm.
know I was younger. I'm younger than my brother by about a
Mm-hmm.
year.
Mm-hmm.
But when I influenced my brother, unfortunately, in bad ways. But when I
Mm-hmm.
became a believer, then he looked at me and saw what was happening. And so he said, I think I need to follow Jesus too. So,
Mm-hmm.
so we both kind of got discipled at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's really exciting. Wow.
Yeah.
Any stories that you have heard about since the COVID-19? I was just talking to Joseph, and he said they're actually seeing more people come to Christ now during the COVID-19 than before. And
Mm-hmm.
he's just thinking, oh, people are, maybe they were hesitating before, and now they're thinking, they're thinking of life and death, and
Mm-hmm.
want to get right with the Lord. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that,
And that's really true. Things have changed, and I've seen like the Lord. I see the Lord doing amazing things in our days. And sometimes I think I'm like, wow, I'm so privileged and honored to live in times like this, because God is
yeah.
actually raising his workers.
You're listening to God Network News Podcast with your host, Cal Curtis. Look up our website at godnetworknews.com.
And I'm here in Brazil, and I get news of what is happening there.
Yeah,
And being here in Brazil, seeing the response, how the church got frightened, you know,
yeah,
by what we are living today, and looking into another reality of the global south, like what is happening there.
mm,
And these movement leaders getting bold and bold in sharing the gospel, and preaching. It's just totally different
yeah,
realities.
yeah,
And uh, and I'm like, oh God, you're doing something so beautiful, because he's filtering, things like the church and all these. Like I've seen here in Brazil, most of the churches, they are filled with all this prosperity, gospel and
yeah,
comfort, and the
yeah,
well-being of a person. And but it's not a church that is actually discipled in order to face the difficulties of our daily
yeah,
life.
yeah,
And they're so afraid that most of them, they're like so shaken up, that then you get shocked to see it. But they have received pictures, and just few days ago, of this same young guy that I told you, baptizing so many people.
wow, wow,
And
that's
I'm like,
exciting.
oh God, you're really filtering, the real followers of Jesus, people that the world, doesn't know. And
Yeah,
they're just doing amazing things. You're just using very simple and ordinary people to do amazing things for you. And looking in that, I've seen like many, people coming to the Lord, many baptism taking place back home. I am not there to actually see it with my eyes, and
yeah,
here in Brazil, but I'm like, oh God, how I miss it, how I would like to be a part of that. And the government of Mozambique is also changing. And there is this law free of religion, and the government is actually making things harder for the church.
Oh, really?
And
Wow.
saying that a church needs to be registered. And to be registered, one church has to have like 60,000 members in order to be registered with the government as a church.
Oh, my
And the
goodness.
reason why the doors are being closed is because of all these prosperity preachers that have flooded Africa and all
really?
these big cities and capitals, and and becoming richer and richer, and people are giving so much money to them. And then the government is actually open up like, oh, this is, this church leaders, they are rich, the church have money. And so the government is beginning to close doors to churches like that.
Wow.
But then, in the other hand, I see, wow, this is such a great opportunity for us to disciple people and to continue, to see the church grow smaller, in small groups. Because 12 people is not a church. If it's under a tree where we meet, for them it's not a church. It's just a group that is gathering in houses and different places. For them, they don't even care. They don't even worry about that. So for me, I'm so excited to be a part of a time like this, and I see a great opportunity of multiplication and exponential growth in places like that. And I think that way, many people will be reached, and many of these unreached places in Africa will be reached. And we are seeing the churches are closed, the traditional church, all of them are closed. But in the groups, the churches that we plant, those small groups, they are getting together every day, sharing the gospel every day, baptizing people all the time, and then testifying Jesus everywhere they go, because for the government it's not a problem,
Yeah. No, that's really, really good. It's funny because the sort of the Western style of mega church actually makes you a target, not just for the government. If there's a government that's not, doesn't like Christians or whatever, but also other people that just don't like what Christians stand for, or they're afraid of Christianity for some reason. If you're large in numbers, you become a target. And it's far better to stay small and multiply. And so it's better if people don't even know what's happening. It's, under their nose, so to speak, and before you know it, there are so many Christians
Everywhere.
that you can't bother them anymore. That's basically how the early church happened. It just was small and in homes and places that they would just meet, like under a tree or whatever, like you were saying, until it grew and grew and grew in influence so much that pretty soon, without even any military, they took over the biggest country in the world.
That's true.
Just like a revolution of love type of thing.
Yeah. So true.
It should be. Yeah. So finally, maybe with the whole concept of DMM and movements, maybe we're starting to learn how we should be doing
as a church.
Yeah. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider donating to help us continue to bring exciting stories fresh from the field. Visit our website at godnetworknews.com and select the PayPal link on the right side of the page, or consider becoming a Patreon partner to receive access to more valuable materials exclusive to our members.